Welcome to Robotics and Automation News webinars, where you can be part of a global event without leaving your home or office. Attend our live webinars and communicate directly with influential professionals in your industry.
Hello and welcome to Robotics and Automation News. My name is Abdul Montakim. I'm editor of the website. In this interview, I speak to two senior executives from an innovative company called Formic. Saman Farid, the CEO, and Malcolm Kerr, the business operations and strategy lead. Formic is a new type of company in the robotics sector, a cross between an integrator and an investment company, as Saman and Malcolm explain.
My name is Saman Farid, the CEO of Formic. I'm my job responsibilities, are everything from janitor to fundraising to managing the strategy and hiring the team who are building this company. So really wear a lot of hats, but very excited by this kind of business that we're building. I think our mission is really to remove drudgery from the world of kind of human labor. And I think robotics really is the key that will unlock a new wave of productivity in global industry. And that's really what we're dedicated to.
Hi, my name is Malcolm Kerr. I'm the business operations and strategy lead at Formic. Right now, that means overseeing all top of the funnel activities. So that includes marketing. It also includes sales development. And I also do a lot of work around sales process and general go-to-market strategy and planning.
Thank you very much. Saman, if you don't mind, I'll ask you a couple of questions first, because I know you're pushed for time. Malcolm can go in depth with his presentation in a few minutes. But Saman, if you don't mind, provide an introduction to the company. As far as I understand, it's a new company that enables or allows businesses to hire robots.
Sure. So we're a combination between a robotics company and a financing company. And what we do, or let me kind of maybe start with the problem we identified in the market. Most users of robotics in manufacturing typically are only given the option to automate in a very complex way. So they would have to either buy some set of equipment and then hire an integrator to kind of do some engineering and installation for them. They would have to come up with capital, and then once they have that robot, they're kind of on their own for ongoing service and maintenance and all that. And what we realized is most factory owners don't want to become robotics experts. They want to focus on what they're good at, which is owning, managing a factory. And so we started thinking about how can we create a solution that solves 100% of the problem for them, not 60% or 80%. And what 100% of the problem means to us is soup to nuts. So we walk in the door, they literally point at the processes that they want to automate, and we do everything else from that point onwards. We whether that means hard automation or it means robotics or it means vision systems, we are responsible for all of those things. We are also responsible for paying for it. We're responsible for getting it up and running, and once it's up and running, we are responsible for maintaining it and servicing it. And our customers are only looking for outcomes, and that's all we provide. We make a commitment to them to move, let's say, 10 boxes per minute from one place to another. That's what we're going to be measured by, and whatever it takes to make that happen is what we will do. So really we want to create this. Another way to think about it is full service automation. Our goal is to really make it extremely easy for manufacturers to adopt robotics automation.
Yeah, it's a very interesting concept. I'm not, you know, that well versed on what integrators do. But as far as I understand, integrators, they kind of get together to the technology and hardware and all that to on behalf of manufacturers and implement the system, if you like. So
Yeah,
you've mentioned
tip,
integrators. What if you could maybe briefly summarize what integrators do and how you differ? I know you touched on it and you know all that, but yeah, what is the difference? Because I can see your business going into different areas, which I'll maybe ask you about in a minute. But what differentiates you from typical integrators, if you like?
yeah. So an integrator is typically like an engineering services firm. And what they do is everything from programming the robot to installing the robot to interfacing with equipment nearby. So, for example, if you need to integrate it with a CNC machine or a mill or whatever it might be, you would hire an integrator. The way they typically work is they, charge you an hourly rate for their engineering fee, and based on however many hours it takes to do the integration work, that's what they charge you for. But once they're done, they're not on the hook for outcomes. So whether they did a good job or a poor job of integrating that robot, you still are responsible to pay them for every hour that their engineers spent doing design and installation. Um, so the reason that often becomes a problem is not because integrators are malicious. We love integrators and we work with many integrators ourselves. But integrators are typically optimizing for a different set of things. They're mostly optimizing for how to keep their engineers busy, how to sell more equipment, and how to continue to uh, um, like dominate the kind of region that they're in. So what we found is that those incentives are a little bit different from what manufacturers need. Um, Not to mention that there is also the kind of financing aspect of it, where integrators need to pay up front for all this equipment, and they customers are out of pocket hundreds of thousands of dollars before they even know something is going to work. Um, so with our model, it's a little bit different in the sense that we um, don't charge the customers anything until the system is up and running. Once the system is up and running, we only charge for performance. So if the system works, 3 hours, then we charge for 3 hours of work. And we, if the robot is underperforming or it goes down for some reason, then we're not getting paid. So again, we're really putting our money where our mouth is, and aligning our incentives with our customers. But in order to do that, we have our own engineering team, but we also work with a lot of integrators. But the way that we work with them is typically quite different from the way that a typical like manufacturing customer might work with them.
Okay, well, I don't want to leave Malcolm out in his presentation, but just one more question about this. So this business model of yours, I mean, so you say you work with integrators, but it sounds like you're potentially competing with them and kind of not putting them out of business, but if I can see why they would hire you or work with you to do something on behalf of, maybe they have a client or customer who want certain systems and they come to you to say, to subcontract out to you or something. Is that the way it works? I mean, and do you see yourself maybe competing or taking away business from integrators or what?
I don't think so. I think we bring a lot of business to integrators, and we hope to bring them much more in the future. Um, our model makes it much easier for customers to adopt automation. And so we think that with this kind of massive adoption that's going to happen of robotics and automation in factories, the number of robots that are going to be deployed on a monthly or yearly basis is going to go up drastically. And our own engineering team can only handle some of the initial portions of that. But for some of the, we might do the design, but then we'll hire an integrator to do the installation or something like that. So we have a lot of projects where we bring business to integrators. We also, I didn't talk too much about the technology that we're building, but we've built a lot of technology tools that also make it much easier and much faster for integrators to do their work. So, one example of that is in a traditional robotics application, an integrator would need to go into the site and spend dozens of hours measuring the customer's facility and figuring out where the robot would go and what space is available to it, and then they would kind of go back and simulate that, or they would just bring a robot and put it in place and then see if it works or not. For us, we actually have developed a 3D laser scanning solution that we bring into the factory, and in about 2 or 3 minutes, we have a full 3D scan of that facility. And then, we have our team do a simulation of the robot in that 3D environment to verify that the robot will work, will fit, that will hit the cycle rates that we need to hit. And we'll create the design of the robot work cell in a very short amount of time, usually a matter of 1 or 2 days. Once we have that, it makes the integrator's job much easier because there's a lot less guesswork involved now about whether or not it's possible to get the system up and running and where it will fit and what things like that. Instead, it becomes kind of deterministic, and they just follow our designs and they build to our designs. So that's one example, but there's many more like that that we have of technology tools that we've built that make it much faster and easier to deploy. Another one that we built is a fleet management and maintenance tool that monitors the status of all of the robots in real time, allows the users to switch between different robot programs very easily, as well as allows us to check for anomalies in temperatures or vibration or things like that, which are typically indications that the robot needs maintenance. And so we monitor and manage this whole fleet and proactively come in and do repairs as needed, rather than, again, going back to the traditional model. A robot might sit on the floor until one day it goes down, and then everybody's scrambling to find spare parts and get it back up and running, or else the whole manufacturing line is down. So those are the types of things that we have built to make it easier for them.
Sounds to me, I don't know if I got this right, but it sounds to me that Formic, by the way, is Formic or Formic? I can't remember.
We call it Formic.
Formic. So Formic it sounds to me that it's a higher level conceptual sort of process, and then the integrator comes in and does the nitty-gritty detail work. That's not necessarily always the case, but that sounds to me like the general process. Okay, well, maybe that will be cleared up or provided more detail by Malcolm. If you don't mind, I'll switch to Malcolm and ask Malcolm to make your presentation, Malcolm, and we'll carry on with some questions. Hopefully you'll both be around for those.
Sounds great. So I will go ahead and share my screen here. Are you all seeing what I'm seeing?
Yeah, we can see. I can see it.
Great. So I recognize we're doing this a bit out of order. I think Saman already spoke to some of the things that I'll go through, but I'll present this in the way that I kind of see it, the kind of logical, not just the what Formic is, but also why Formic exists and the problems we're trying to solve. And maybe that'll spark some questions for conversation towards the end of the call. So Formic is a relatively new company, but it was established by people that came from all the different pockets of the automation and robotics world. We have people from all the big OEMs. We have people from equipment financing backgrounds. We have people that came from system integrators. And we also work with a big network of system integrator partners across the industry. So although we are a relatively new company, I think we kind of represent the best of breed with regards to both equipment financing and also the kind of engineering and robotics world. And what we were kind of reacting to, and I think what a lot of different companies are kind of seeing right now, is that automation is becoming really, really necessary in order for American manufacturers to compete on a global scale. So on one hand, you have this unprecedented labor shortage. It's really hard for manufacturers to hire and retain employees right now. The second piece is margins are getting really, really tight in pretty much every corner of manufacturing because there's a lower cost of labor in a lot of other countries, but also because a lot of other countries have really heavily invested in automation over the years at a manner that outpaces the United States. So everybody kind of knows that they need to automate. But then we kind of looked around and we asked ourselves the question, well, why haven't more facilities automated if automation is clearly the answer to this kind of pinch? So it basically comes down, particularly in small to mid-sized facilities, to one or more of these 5 reasons. The first is time, actually getting a robot up and running, doing all the vendor selection, finding financing. It's really complicated and it takes a while. A lot of manufacturers are frankly so busy running the day-to-day operations that they just haven't gotten around to it. The second piece is capital. Robots are quite expensive, and even if you have the money, it takes a long time to budget for them. The third piece is a lack of expertise. Typically, we see there are not a ton of people in these smaller facilities that understand really in a granular way how robotics works. The fourth piece is production uncertainty. So if you don't know exactly what you're going to be making and exactly how you're going to be making it, it's pretty hard to justify buying a really expensive robot that might be very specialized towards one task because those things may not become ROI positive for a really long time. And then something might change and you're left with this incredibly expensive paperweight collecting dust in the corner of your facility. Then the last piece is risk. Automating can come with a whole host of additional costs if something breaks, if you need to come in and re-engineer something. And so a lot of manufacturers prefer to stick with labor, which is a relatively known commodity that has a lot of flaws relative to kind of upgrading their processes to be automated. And for a lot of facilities, it's way more than just one of these. It might be all 5, but these are really, really common barriers to entry. The next thing we were kind of seeing is what Saman already kind of spoke to, which is this lack of alignment. No manufacturer wakes up in the morning and thinks, I really want to buy a certain piece of equipment. Manufacturers want outcomes, but the entire industry is built around selling equipment. And that can be really problematic. Integrators, they sell equipment and engineering hours at a markup. They also have kind of a losing proposition where they're quoting a ton of projects that never actually get budget because the cost is too high. And really, at the end of the day, what they want to do is sell those engineering hours and sell equipment. They don't want to be spending time doing a bunch of lead gen. Lenders, they want to kind of lend money at the highest possible cost of capital. And obviously, OEMs are incentivized to sell as much of their equipment as they possibly can. So Formic, we kind of align ourselves with the manufacturer. We don't get paid unless we're delivering outcomes to that manufacturer. But we also make life simpler for the people on the left by giving, sales-ready leads directly to the integrators so they don't have to do their own demand gen, shovel-ready projects. We also handle all the equipment financing and all the purchasing. So we're kind of realigning the industry around what people actually want. So that kind of brings me to what Formic actually is. So we purchase, integrate, and maintain robots from top OEMs at scale. So we are kind of operating this big fleet of robots. Everything we do, the name of the game is doing it at scale. We turn around and then offer these systems at a really low hourly rate with performance guaranteed to the manufacturers that need them the most. So I'll stop there. I have more slides, but that's kind of the gist. And I think based on all of this, as well as with what Saman already said, that's Formic in a nutshell.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that presentation. If you're both here, I don't know if Saman is still here. I'll ask you one or two questions.
Perfect.
Yeah, okay. Well, the question I have, the first question I have is the costs, as you say, is a big factor in the lack of automation, or at least the potential of automation in America not being realized as much. What are maybe you can give numbers, but you don't have to, but what are the kind of ballpark figures we're looking at in terms of what you charge and the equivalent setup in the traditional way would be for a manufacturer?
Yeah, so the levers that we have in order to determine what the actual hourly rate will be. The first one is, what is the cost of the system going to be, both in terms of the hard equipment cost as well as the engineering hours cost. So that's one factor that we kind of take and boil into that hourly rate. The second piece is how many hours per day that system will be running. And then the third piece is the duration of the contract. So the longer people commit to working with Formic, the lower we can bring that hourly rate. We've seen rates as low as $8 an hour, which we're pretty proud of to be able to offer that. Our rates also get cheaper based on tiered usage. So it's really not a single hourly rate. It's actually more of a pricing scale. So we'll say, hey, you use it this many hours per week, it's this price. But if you use it more than that, then it gets even cheaper. So you can think of it almost like the opposite of overtime. But yeah, it could be as low as $8 an hour. We're seeing on average that hourly rate is about 42% less than what people are paying today in manual labor costs. And so we're pretty confident that we can kind of hit numbers that are very attractive to manufacturers.
Right. And the systems that you provide, I mean, I know Saman was explaining how you design them and simulate them and all that beforehand. Obviously, that saves time and money in terms of implementation. But still, nonetheless, are there any iterations that go on once you start implementing? The situation might change, or maybe you didn't account for something, or whatever. In your experience and what the jobs you've dealt with, yeah, how much iteration goes on, or is it flawless and smooth for every client?
In a perfect world, every deployment is just flawless and absolutely perfect. But obviously the reality is that sometimes changes do arise. I think one really great thing about working with Formic is we are just as incentivized to keep that equipment running as the manufacturer is. So oftentimes we will come in and do additional work, making sure that that system is running at no additional cost. If there is some more significant kind of repurposing of equipment that needs to happen, sometimes what we'll do is we'll take the cost of that and amortize it across the rest of the contract that people have with us. So the hourly rate might go up a tiny little bit, but nobody is absorbing that CapEx expense. So that's kind of how we do account for variations. But more often than not, we'll just come in and kind of make those adjustments as needed, because again, we are incentivized to keep that equipment running. And that's kind of different from the way the industry works today. So again, we are totally aligned with the manufacturer.
Now,
I apologize to interrupt, but I do have to jump off for my next call. It's with a customer. So thank you for the time that you've given us. And yeah, if anything doesn't get resolved in this call, feel free to email me or Malcolm, and we'd be happy to answer any more questions.
Thank you, Saman. Thank you for your time, and speak to you soon. Good luck.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
See you.
So Malcolm, just to continue our iterations and implementations conversation, one of the things I I've been told by people who I've spoken to is manufacturers tend to quite like the idea of having a flexible operation, or maybe it's an increasingly desired thing where manufacturers can be flexible, change their processes, and produce different products, meaning different types of robots and different processes are required. How much have you seen of that? And that obviously means that you have to change the design of the system that you've given them and implement different kinds of things. Tell us about your experience or knowledge of those kind of flexibility issues, if you like.
Yeah, it's a good question. Typically, when something like that does arise, it's something that we did not kind of anticipate at the outset, I would say. Most of the time, the applications that we're focused on are ones that are really core to that manufacturer's business that won't change for a really long time. But inevitably, sometimes things do pop up. It's like, oh, we want to repurpose that machine to work on a different part or work on a different machine. The way we handle that is similar to the way we were talking about variations earlier. A lot of times we're happy to come in and make those adjustments because we want to keep that robot running as many hours as it can. So in that sense, we are almost more of like a managed service, and all of that is baked into that hourly rate. But if it's the situation where that robot is being repurposed every 2 months in a really significant way, that's something that we would probably amortize over the duration of the rest of the contract.
Right. And my next question about is kind of related. I'm just going to share my screen for it as well, because I remember seeing on your website a part where you list a few different types of tasks. And modularity interests me in every kind of industry. And, the systems you supply, I don't know how modular you can be, or do you have to customize each and every solution or build each and every solution for that individual customer? How much commonality exists between the different clients you have? Obviously, the common thing is certain types of robots are going to be used by different companies, whether they're collaborative or whatever. But yeah, well, how much modularity and repetition, cut and paste kind of is possible for you in your industry, and what kind of tasks, if you like, are common between manufacturers that you find? I mean, as I say, here I see machine tending, material handling, welding, and inspection. They must be, I guess, they must be fairly popular requests from people. So yeah, talk about the modularity, or how you can streamline your own business by making things repetitive, if you like.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think every application to some extent is custom. There are, they're all like little snowflakes. No two are exactly the same. We've seen a good amount of repeatability within the world of machine tending and palletizing. There are variations, but there are a lot of similar themes that we can kind of recycle. And that's another way that we can kind of deliver efficiencies and pass those savings on to the customer. But we're constantly working on kind of making ourselves more efficient, building processes and systems that'll make that process of scoping and deploying easier and easier. But I think one thing that makes manufacturing both really fun and also challenging with regards to automation is that there are really no two processes that are exactly the same. Even two facilities that might have a similar kind of application, they might have totally different floor layouts and space requirements. Throughput could be totally different. So there are such an infinite number of variables that there is always, to some extent, some customization. But with the processes and systems we're building, we can usually get something maybe 70 or 80% of the way there. We work with a lot of system integrators to get ourselves to 100. And because our network is so broad, and those different integrators will have different specialties and different sets of experiences, we find that we can be really efficient getting, our like 70 to 80% all the way to 100 pre-deployment, and then also kind of maintaining and servicing and repurposing that equipment as needed.
It's a very interesting company, and I mean, you've done, obviously, you know, it's a very complex process when you're designing things. The first part is the complex part, the initial groundwork, the thinking and the designing is still very difficult. And thereafter, once you've got a good system going, there are things that you can repeat for different customers and all that. But it's an interesting one, and you've gone through. I mean, it looks like you've done a lot of work on designing these kind of systems, and it's a very good, it's a very interesting concept and company and business model. How well are you doing now in terms of business, and how do you see things going in the next year or two in terms of growth or directions you're going in? What markets are you know, interesting for you or big for you at the moment?
Right now, our pipeline is looking very robust. We've hired a few different people for the sales team to help us manage that. Um, and our kind of geographical focus right now has been the greater Midwest, but we are national. And because we do work with that network of system integrators, we can have boots on the ground in pretty much any state. But because we have a lot of team members that are based in Chicago, uh, that typically tends to be kind of the center point of our kind of go-to-market radius. But you know, we're happy to work anywhere within the United States because of that network.
Mhm. And what do you see as Formic's competitive landscape going forward? At the moment, you're probably, I don't know if you're the only company, but it must be one of the very few companies with this kind of approach to automation and offering of automation as a service, if you like, to manufacturers. I mean, how do you see things? It's very interesting to me that new kinds of business models are being emerging because of computing or the availability of computing and different ways of thinking, software as a service and automation as a service, robots as a service. All of these things are fairly new, but they people do tend to pile in and start other businesses, competitive businesses. How do you see things going forward? I don't know if you know of other companies doing this kind of thing at all.
Yeah, there are certainly companies that have seen the same things that we've seen and are reacting through their business models to those pressures that they see squeezing smaller manufacturers in particular. Um, I don't think that we have any kind of direct one-to-one competitor because of our strange DNA and that we are half equipment financing and half robotics and engineering. Um, our kind of focus by definition is relatively broad. We want to be able to work with a lot of different kinds of manufacturers and to be able to deploy a really broad range of systems. There are a lot of robot as a service companies that have narrowed their focus into certain areas. And that is certainly a valid approach as well. Um, so I see them more as allies than competitors because I think that they are preaching similar things to us. And I think that they are kind of helping to change this perception that the only way to get a robot into your facility is to buy it. So I kind of see their success as our success because they are reacting to the same things and kind of preaching a lot of the same benefits. But the way that they're actually delivering those benefits are slightly different. I don't think that there's anybody that is delivering outcomes in the same way Formic is. And ultimately, we'll see kind of which type of business, which approach is going to get the most traction. But uh, yeah, personally, I think it's really good to have more companies in the industry saying similar things because I do think there is some kind of entrenched thinking that the best value is always going to be to buy your own robot. And we believe that's not necessarily true, particularly in the small to mid-sized manufacturing segment.
Well, certainly if you're looking at the $8 an hour compared to even the new collaborative, very small robots that can cost around $20,000 per unit or something like that, which is kind of reasonable compared to hundreds of thousands of dollars for the big giant robots of old that are still
Hmm.
going strong, and they're doing good work and all that, but it's prohibitively expensive for small to medium-sized businesses, I imagine, to get those kind of robots. The collaborative robots, as I say, around 20,000, probably a lot less as well. In some cases, they can afford to buy. But if you compare that with, the kind of prices you're talking about, very, very low prices, then yeah, it's no competition really. But the question, the last question I have for you is, if you don't mind broadening, if I ask you to broaden out the context, if you like, and we're talking about America in general, and we did touch on the idea of America being trying to be more competitive as a manufacturing nation, especially against low-wage countries that actually have quite a lot of automation as well. So it's a very
Hmm.
difficult situation. This kind of approach, where manufacturers can acquire or get automation as and when they need for whatever products they want, might make the manufacturing industry more dynamic, more responsive to consumer demands, and so on. Greater level of customization, the concept of I don't know, batch of one or whatever, that kind of thing. That's what it's going towards. But what's your view of what kind of thing is needed, what kind of things are needed for America and industrialized nations in Europe as well, to stay competitive, maintain their positions as leading manufacturing nations, or maybe even surpassing their expectations?
Hmm. Yeah, we certainly believe that automation is going to be absolutely core to that. And not just automation in the way that we know it today, with a lot of kind of traditional industrial or collaborative robots, but also in terms of technologies that have not really hit the market yet in a mainstream way. Uh, I think one thing that's really exciting that we think and talk about all the time is kind of bridging the gap between all these really new, innovative robotics companies that might be based in Silicon Valley, and these companies, these small to mid-sized manufacturers that maybe have been in business for a really, really long time, but don't have heavy experience with industrial automation. Kind of, if Formic could be the bridge that brings those two groups together, uh, I think that would be really, really powerful for American manufacturing, because we have kind of this rich history and kind of this deep set of experiences in the manufacturing sector. And then we also have some of the most innovative companies on the planet that are constantly developing new and exciting technologies. And I kind of see that right now there's not a really elegant way for those two groups to find each other, and for that technology to kind of find its way to the people that need it the most and the facilities that need it the most and could benefit it from it the most. And I think a business model like Formic, where we're saying we're delivering outcomes, don't worry about what technology it is, we are holding ourselves accountable to delivering this outcome. And whether we're using a traditional OEM that's been around for a long time and you recognize the brand, or whether we're using a company that just raised their Series C and they're based out of Silicon Valley and they have this new really cool exciting piece of technology, we could do either and that outcome is still going to be the same. So what I think is really powerful and cool about Formic is our ability to kind of realign the industry and kind of have these people find each other and make a much more conducive business model to that kind of for that kind of marriage to happen. So I think it's absolutely automation, but I don't think it's necessarily just automation in the way that we're familiar with it today. I think it's also kind of using the best of what our country has to offer and kind of bring those people together so that we can kind of really reshore and have this kind of manufacturing resurgence in the United States. I think it's going to be absolutely pivotal.
Yeah, it's already, it was happening before coronavirus. There was quite a lot of reshoring going on. Coronavirus has destroyed or is gradually destroying the supply chain when it's going to come back, and that means people are going to have to look closer to home for various things, products and employees. The automation is, I mean, the immediate need is for things like lorry drivers, truck drivers, and people who deliver food to local stores. In this country, in the UK, there's food shortages because of that problem. They can't find enough people to drive the trucks and things like that. So automation, I don't know when it's going to happen, but these driverless trucks, I think they need to be brought in fairly quickly. There are other things as well that I think need to be accelerated in order to come out of the pandemic or deal with the pandemic, the issues that pandemic has raised, as well as set ourselves up for the future. It's inevitable that autonomous trucks are going to be used. Why not have the government accelerate the programs and do them in short runs? Say, like for example, in this country, you got a channel, a body of water between France and the UK, and one of the problems is because the UK has left the European Union. European Union based drivers have all left the UK to go and work there, and the UK is finding it difficult to find truck drivers. So why not use autonomous trucks to get across the channel, and then the European drivers can pick them up and on the other side of the channel in France and drive them manually wherever they need to go. So yeah, these kind of things. It's a fascinating technology automation in all sorts of ways, and I find it very interesting that you're kind of on the side of the manufacturer, where you're saying you don't get, you make money along with the manufacturer. You kind of your fortunes are linked with theirs. So that's a very interesting business approach or business model as well. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time. I'm sorry I went on a bit there at the end, but yeah, it is very interesting technology. Is there any questions that I should have asked there, or anything that you'd like to add to what you've said?
I feel as though we covered the core pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you asked some great questions, and I think, between Saman and myself, we explain it slightly differently. So hopefully there's a breadth of perspective there. But no, I don't feel like there's anything we didn't cover.
Yeah, okay, that's good. Yeah, it's a very interesting company and concept. It'd be very interesting to follow your progress. So thank you very much for your time and insights, and talk to you soon.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Really appreciate the time.
Send us an email at sales@roboticsandautomationnews.com to register for one of our many upcoming webinars. And if you'd like us to host your webinar, we have a range of options, including long-term lead generation packages and marketing campaigns. We look forward to hearing from you soon.